Welcome everyone to Sit Heads Meditation Club. My name is John. I organize this group. Sit Heads is a sitting and social group for people interested in deep meditation practice. If you want to hang out with us, you can go to sitheads.com. That's sit-heads.com to sign up for our regular meetups and special events like this one. We also have a group chat going on the platform Slack, and I will post a link in the chat for that if you want to join us there. Everything we do is free and donation-based. Just wanted to make that clear. So we don't have a set teacher in Sit Heads, but we do have visiting teachers come join us once in a while for Q&A, like tonight's teacher, Dr. William Jackson. So before I introduce William, I just want to note that if you get anything of value from this session today, from the Q&A, you should consider offering Dana. Dana is a word that refers to donations given in the spirit of generosity and gratitude for these teachings. So if you'd like to do that, you can PayPal William. William, it's okay for me to, in the chat, not in the video, it's okay for me to share the email? Okay, so if you do want to offer Dana, you can do so by sending via PayPal to this email address that I just put in the chat. So now I'll just briefly introduce Dr. William Jackson, who I'm very excited to have here. Dr. Jackson is a psychologist and a former Buddhist monk, ordained, I believe, in the Pa-Auk Theravadan tradition, where he did extensive retreat. He has over 7,000 hours of retreat. He's also trained with a wide variety of wonderful teachers in the Theravadan, Zen, and Tibetan Buddhist lineages. I believe he's done also done a lot of study and practice in Thich Nhat Hanh's lineage. He's also gotten to study with Ajahn Brahmawamso and His Holiness the Dalai Lama and many other wonderful august teachers. So he brings a wealth of knowledge, as well as being a psychologist and psychotherapist who focuses on combining meditation, psychotherapy, and positive psychology in his clinical practice. So this is a great opportunity to ask about practice, definitely, and also about the intersection of traditional Dharma, meditative insight, and psychotherapy. William, anything that you want to say before we get started?
Sure. So I'm a clinical health psychologist, former Buddhist monk, and maybe I could just say a little bit about what that means. Of
course.
As a clinical health psychologist, I've worked in a number of hospitals, done a little bit of research on mindfulness, meditation with chronic pain and other sort of diagnoses. I've run clinical groups and been trained in, MBSR and MBCT, MST, all of those sort of clinical approaches, and I'm familiar with the research behind those as well. And as a psychologist, for me, psychotherapy really fits within mindfulness or a meditation practice. So I look at psychotherapy as a way to help people to meditate more deeply or apply some of these meditation techniques or get to a place where they can meditate. And then as a monastic, I was actually originally ordained in a Vietnamese Zen tradition. And then I practiced with the Pa-Auk tradition significantly. And a lot of the meditations I practice today are from that tradition. But I've picked up some things as I went along. And I was a bit of a tramp for a while in the meditative traditions too. So I've studied with a number of different teachers, and my job in the monastery when I was in the Vietnamese tradition was actually organizing events for different teachers. So I got to talk with them and attend different masters and teachers at different times. So I'm pretty easily distracted telling little anecdotes about different teachers. So hopefully we'll have some time for some of those too.
Thanks, William. Sorry for getting your lineage wrong. I will say that the Pa Auk tradition is, at least in the circles I move in, a notoriously demanding system of meditative practice. My understanding is that their standards for practicing jhana, meditative absorption, very stringent. Likewise, their standards for practicing vipassana, very strictly in accordance with the Visuddhimagga, the famous commentary from 5th century Sri Lanka from Buddhaghosa. So I don't know if anyone wants to poke at that and dig into Pa Auk training and what meditation is like in that tradition, but I hope someone does, because I would love to hear it. So having said that, I've got questions starting to queue up. So let's get started. Please don't be shy. Just throw those questions at me. You don't have to ask the question. You can just say that you have one. But if you'd rather not ask it, you could also send me the question and I'll ask it for you. All right, Stephen has a question.
Hi, William. It's good to see you again.
Hi, nice to see you.
My question is, since you have experience in a monastic setting and are now practicing psychotherapy outside of that and helping people to learn how to meditate and just generally live life more skillfully, two-part question. You can take whichever feels easiest to speak about. What do you find to be the biggest challenges that lay practitioners face? As one, what became big challenges after you left the monastic tradition, and what do you find people are really struggling with? And kind of conversely, what did you experience in the monastic setting and context that you found was really helpful when you exited? So like what kinds of conditions or like ways in which you set your lifestyle up are conducive to continuing your practice outside of the monastic setting and in lay life?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I think on one level, the obstacles to I'm not going to even say practice, but more just the development of insight in the monastery are very similar to what happens outside of a monastery. I'm leading a meditation course right now. We have 20 people going through, and I just did a little survey asking what the main obstacles were in their meditation practice, and I asked, are most of them internal or external? And 18 out of the 20 people said most of their distractions and obstacles are internal. And part of becoming a monastic is you are removing some of the external obstacles, right? So you're removing your responsibilities to have a job. You're, in some ways, removing your responsibility as a family member, in a way, a son, a daughter, a husband, a wife, a grandfather, grandmother, right? You're removing your responsibility, so you don't have to spend time on that. And instead, you're focusing solely on developing your meditation practice and penetrating the Dharma, so to speak. But when I came out of the monastery, it was very similar, but it was just more hectic outside of the monastery. There's more things going on. There's more pictures of well-being that you have to contend with. So what I mean by that is whether you are a monk or you are a lawyer or you are an engineer or a psychotherapist or an academic, in each one of those, there's sort of this idea that if you are good at it, if you pursue it to fruition, that there'll be happiness there. You know, if you succeed at your job, or you succeed as a parent, or you succeed in any of these areas, then there's going to be happiness there. And as a monastic, you're just sort of focused on one. It's like, I'm going for enlightenment. If I succeed as a monastic, that means that there's going to be a fruition of well-being, and I'm following all these rules for meditation to calm my nervous system and develop clarity and all that business. But also, in lay life, there's the underlying belief that if I succeed in my job, if I succeed developing a particular craft, that's going to lead to my happiness. And there's so many competing value sets. Your parents have a value set for you. They believe if you act in a certain way, that you're going to be happy. Your school does, your boss does, your religion. There's all of these competing visions for well-being that people have to contend with on a daily basis, and it gets really confusing. And I think that is a big difference being outside of a monastic setting. One thing that I found that was super helpful in a monastic setting was, I didn't think I would be saying this, but belief. The belief that the meditation practice is going to be helpful. That sort of saddha, which is sort of faith. Saddha is a mixture of confidence through practice and experience and faith. And the belief that it's actually going to help you manage your thoughts, manage your mind, your feelings, that it's going to bring some sort of peace to you. And there's scientific research showing that meditation is super helpful, and that goes a particular distance. But I think seeing monks on a regular basis, or people who have been practicing for a long time, and seeing how different they are than other people, and seeing a meditation teacher look at you with just kindness, loving you like people who really cared for you in your life love you, but more so, like a more sure love, is quite a profound experience. And you go, oh, okay, maybe there is something to this. And you see that again and again and again and again. And that, I think, is really helpful for keeping somebody on the path. They see it. They see the results rather than just somebody talking about it. You're surrounded by it. And so there's not like a questioning. So you dig in and you meditate, and you sit for that extra 30 minutes, hour, or use your spare time to go deeper in the meditation practice. So I think those are maybe two little tidbits which I thought could be helpful.
Very much so. Thank you. Surprising and very helpful.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Stephen, and thanks, William. Tony has a question.
Yeah, so nice to meet you, William. So I was going to ask, what is your opinion on right livelihood? I feel like I got a lot of guidance in practice, but not so much in how I can live my life better, especially not in a modern context. Maybe in the Buddhist time, people didn't work as much as we did, or the jobs were much different, maybe not as mental and more like physical. So you could actually kind of do like kayagasati or something and really get into your farming or whatnot. But our work is very mental, and it can be like 8 to 10 hours of our day is spent doing this. And I just want to hear like a more in-depth description of right livelihood. Like, I feel like right livelihood is almost similar to how metta at first can seem so vague and whatnot, but then once you go into it more, you can understand it. And I personally feel like my livelihood suffered tremendously once I kind of threw away a lot of old beliefs, like I wanted to just go towards like enlightenment and knowledge, but I wasn't a monk, and I was just like working temp jobs and living at my parents' house and like accumulating and avoiding all sorts of people because they're not Dhamma practitioners, so I don't want to be around them. And all these beliefs that kind of made me isolated and lonely. And I feel like if I got more guidance on right livelihood, I would have avoided those traps. So if you could please speak to that, and a sub question, if I can ask 2 questions, is like how to deal with celibacy in monkhood. So those are big questions.
Yeah. Yeah. So rewind. Okay. So I was in Burma. I was sitting in the Sima Hall at Paok Toya, which is the forest center. There's this beautiful Sima Hall up on, like in, it's like the ones that you imagine like a monk's, meditation hall should be like. It's all wood. There's a big golden Buddha, and you can see all the greenery in the jungle, and there's like lizards and birds chirping, all these, monks in saffron robes. And I was sitting there, and I'd been in retreat for maybe 3 or 4 months at that time. And for about 10, 14 hours a day of meditation. And at that time, I realized sort of in vivo that my mind was changing, that I was watching myself become a different person. And I thought about who I was, years before, and the habits that I had, whatever substances that I was using, whatever ways I was reacting with anger, frustration, or greed, and that I was really acting differently. And in that moment, I felt a sense of well-being. I felt whole. I felt also that my soul was like, soul, that internally, deeply, something was resting, right? And it was a beautiful moment. And I thought of my father. And my father was at the time working for Deutsche Bank in asset liability management. And I thought to myself, I've been training my mind for the past, 4 years to really just focus on developing well-being. And day in and day out for the last 4 months, all day, every day, I've been focused on training my mind for well-being in the most acute sort of way, most concentrated way that I can imagine. What's my dad doing with his mind? I love my dad. My dad's an amazing guy. What's he doing with his mind every day, day in and day out? It's not training it for well-being. He's training it to be a relationships manager for managing other banks' money and assessing risk of their stock portfolio, right? And I think that's fine to be doing that, but what sort of work, what sort of thing can you do with your mind day in and day out that's going to continue to cultivate more and more a sense of well-being for yourself? How can you use your mind all day? And for me, that's what meditation is. You are using your mind in a particular way, and you're changing the function and the structure of your brain by using your mind in a different way. And how can you train that and organize it in a way that brings you more of a sense of well-being, whatever it is that you're doing? And you can start really small with just changing one thing here, one thing there, like taking a break for 15 minutes 3 times a day. So you can calm your nervous system. And that way, when you're talking with the next person, you are being, you can practice kindness. You can actually get your wits about you to be intentional about your behavior in your day-to-day. I was teaching this CEO meditation a number of years ago, and he, at the time, his company was, I think he had like 40 employees. Now he has over 500, so he's doing well. But he after he started practicing, after about 3-4 weeks of practicing regularly, he came to me and he was visibly upset with me. And he said, "You ruined my mojo." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And he said, "Well, I used to go into a business meeting and I knew what I wanted. I said what I wanted and I didn't listen to anybody else. This is what I want. This is my idea and we're going forward with it. And if somebody reacted, I'd respond sharply to them and I got things done. And now somebody asked me a question and I'm thinking, am I going to hurt their feelings? What is the best answer to this? What should I do if I consider my values, how much time it's going to take me and how much time it's going to take them?" And he started second guessing himself. And this was really hard for him. It was a really hard transition, but it was a transition. He was starting to become a new person, because in our day to day, we're usually responding in a way that we learned in the past. So we are in a way living in the past because we're using the mind that we created in the past. When we open it up to being mindful, we are incorporating more and more present moment information, and we can make sort of better choices. But it's a process to learn all those new habits and ways of being and integrate that into our day to day. But I think more and more as you practice yourself, you'll be able to integrate that into any work that you're doing. Whether it's kindness, whether it's taking a moment, whether it is a personal share to a colleague where you notice that something is going on with them and you open up a little bit of a deeper conversation. I think doing something that you feel really good about, that motivates you, that you feel is taking care of yourself is really important as well. Like the Dalai Lama uses the term being wisely selfish. Being able to take care of yourself in your work, I think, is really essential too. And in that way, you have something to offer other people. If you're working yourself to the bone day in and day out, it's unlikely you're going to be a nice person to be in a meeting with. So I think that arranging your schedule and finding a job where you can arrange your schedule in a way that is where you're able to calm your nervous system occasionally, where you're able to focus on the things that bring you a sense of joy, I think is really essential.
Yeah, I appreciate that answer. And it's like livelihood is, I almost thought came up for me where it's like livelihood is a bunch of things that you're cultivating all the time in your life. And you can either choose to cultivate like kindness and thoughtfulness and respect and all those like virtuous qualities, and then the practices you do can kind of back it. They can back it. And one thing I noticed personally in my work situations is when I did more metta as opposed to say like noting or just focusing on my breath all the time, I was just like way nicer, and I felt even more creative in the things I was saying. And I felt like I could treat the words I was saying as phrases by putting the intention of metta behind it. And just like thinking of innovative things, like, a lot of the people who come into Dhamma and all these things, they're super disillusioned with the way our society was set up. And the Buddha did I had this theory where it's like the Buddha, when they say he was either going to be the emperor, like the greatest emperor of all time, or the greatest sage of all time. And we all know that guy was into the middle way, right? So I feel like he was political and in a sly way, where even the way he set up the monks, he made them rely on the people for food, because he probably knew that these guys would just totally extricate themselves from the lay people, and they wouldn't be able to benefit from this thing. So and somebody even said divide and conquer was like a Buddhist thing, because they used it in reverse, right? He was giving an example as to how a society can be destroyed. And then people kind of used it to destroy societies. But yeah, like more of that. If you could speak more on that, like how does one come up with the idea to get a job? You know, like some people who meditate, they might only take jobs that are explicitly helping people, like nursing or teaching or psychotherapy, but they might shy away from maybe getting a computer science job or a
And
business job.
I think there's lots of different ways, of course. There's lots of different ways people can offer something to our society. I think there's lots and lots of different ways to do that. And I think it's really important to, I think, look inward as well of what do you feel is going to be helpful? Do you feel proud about what you're doing? Do you feel like it's a good thing? Do you feel like you're offering something back? Does that excite you? I think that insight, having a moment of honesty with yourself, is really essential piece of finding a career that you feel really good about. If you take a second and you ask yourself, does this feel good to me? Do I feel like this is good for me, good for my family, good for culture? I think that's it's going to be essential.
True. Thank you for your answer.
Sure.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks, William. Next up, Bijan has a question. Bijan.
Yes, so thanks for doing this, William. My question is about practice. So there's a lot of practice advice that you get from maybe a traditional Buddhist education of how to set up a practice or fight distraction. Did you have any insights, maybe from psychotherapy, that you felt really benefited your meditation practice that is maybe overlooked or not emphasized in more traditional Buddhist like scriptures or advice?
Yeah. I think there's a number of them. I think in general, it's funny, if you go through psychotherapy training after being a monk, that was my first foray into understanding the mind. And so I saw everything through like this Buddhist lens. So when Freud says, develop an even hovering attention, or humanistic therapists say, develop an unconditional positive regard, or develop the observer self, or there's all of these different terms that people use for developing the same faculty of mind as mindfulness, right? There's just lots of different words for it. And as you go through psychotherapy training, there's certain things that work for the mind. There's certain ways of confronting anxiety. There's certain ways of calming the nervous system. There are certain ways that the mind transforms or breaks through trauma or whatever. And there's just lots of different words for it. It's just branding in a way. And even in the Buddhist times, something that Tony was saying reminded me, he would take a lot of terms that were really popular, provocative terms, and he'd redefine them because they were provocative terms, and he'd make his own little tweak on it and talk about it in a different way. But something that was really helpful for me, I think something that I use all the time, a few things. One is Prochaska and Di Clemente's Stages of Change. So the stages of change theory, or the trans-theoretical model, was, it goes through a couple of steps. So the first one is pre-contemplation. So if we draw a parallel to Buddhism, pre-contemplation, or Buddhist psychology, pre-contemplation is, there's no problem. I don't have a problem. There's no problem with me drinking. Avijja, right? Ignorance. To ignore suffering. First noble truth, there is suffering, not just like, it's always translated as like, life is suffering, right? There is suffering. In my life right now, I have suffering in my life in some way. And for me, the first noble truth is that moment of honesty of recognizing there's suffering. So that might be pre-contemplation stage in Prochaska and Di Clemente's Stages of Change, which is, okay, maybe it's bad that I'm drinking. Maybe it is affecting my family and friends and my job, and I should maybe do something about it, but I'm just not sure how I'm going to do that yet. And then there's sort of between contemplation and planning, which is the next stage, is sort of, okay, something is wrong. I've maybe found that the source of it is an action that I'm taking in a way that I'm responding to reality, right? Second noble truth, sort of, there's a source of suffering, and there's possibility that I can do something about it. So third noble truth is, there's an action that I can take. So this is pre-contemplation, contemplation, planning, where you're planning how I'm going to actually take action on this. And that might be going into the third noble truth of, there's something I can actually do about this. I can respond to the world in a different way. It's possible. And then taking action. Maybe you decide, I'm going to stop drinking, and you put away all the alcohol in your home. And you tell your friends and family that I'm not going to drink anymore, so they can give you some social support, maybe a little bit of social pressure. And then we're going into Francesca and Di Clemente's maintenance stage, where it's a little bit of a different energy, where you have to not just take action, but you have to set up systems where you can make the choice, not once not to drink, but set up a system where you're making the choice every day, every day, every day. And you are being supported to do that. And for me, that is the path to enlightenment, right? That is that you're not just making the choice once and have the intellectual understanding that, nibbana exists, or the intellectual understanding that I can let go of grasping or craving and everything's impermanent, but actually walking the path, which takes a lot of support. You can't do it alone. You need the friends and family to do that. So for me, this stages of change was a way to break down some of these things into real practical steps. Is a translation for me of the deeper practices into a cultural form in which I can understand. It's bite size for me and for other people.
Thank you. That is great.
Sure.
Thanks, William. Thanks, Bijan. Mary had a question. Mary, would you like to ask your question?
Oh, hi. Hey, listen, I'm a serious practitioner. I'm trained in the mind illuminated by Culadasa. And this winter, I really had to take up metta practice pretty strongly for just a number of reasons. But cutting quickly to my question, plus I'm pretty fascinated by the overlap between psychotherapy and meditation, and am using that. Internal family systems I'm finding is really compatible with the mind illuminated purifications. Wow. Okay. I've started wondering, and I'm also really steeped in positive psychology from a good friend, Seligman, you know what I mean? Okay. Mm-hmm. So I've been wondering if I need to revisit Thich Nhat Hanh, because he's such a joyful Buddhist. Okay. And I'm investigating joy in my internal family systems work. Okay. And I've read a little bit of his stuff many years ago, but it was really beginner stuff, and I just wondered if you had a suggestion, because that's the way I'm heading inside, which is incorporating more joy. Also using, I can't think what his name is right now, but the guy who has that thing where you feel something joyful and then you marinate in it for a while. He's very well known. I've been corresponding with him. Rick Hansen. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I just thought maybe Thich Nhat Hanh might be a way to go. And I just wondered if there's a book I could investigate, maybe I could listen to on Audible, so that there would be some exercises in it. Mm-hmm. And you have any suggestions? And do you think he's a good one for me to head towards? Or
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great idea. I mean, that's the short answer. I can give a little story to back that if that's helpful.
Oh yeah, I love Thich Nhat Hanh stories. Sure. Okay.
So I'll tell you two short stories. So one is the first time that I met Thich Nhat Hanh. He was like sort of the grandfather in our tradition. So we went to the monastery in Plum Village in Bordeaux, France region. And he, has a small hut with a very large porch that looks out over this field. And he you usually gather on the back porch and everybody sits in a circle. But he was in his hut and he was writing on this big wooden desk, and he was faced away from us, sort of writing, one of his, beautiful books. And he heard us come in. And as he's writing, he hears us come in, and he slowly lifts his head. And then he takes his pencil and he puts it in the cup. And then he closes his book. And he opens a drawer. And then he takes his book and he places it in the drawer. And he shuts the drawer. And then he turns to us and he says, "Hello, welcome." And we were all young monks at the time. We were like, wow, that was amazing, because he really moved. And this is the term that I have come up with, just trying to put it into language, was with a natural pace. He's found a way to move his body, to talk, to teach in a way that feels good all the time. And you can just see it in his movement. When he schedules his day, he schedules enough time that he can walk slowly to wherever he's going. His life is organized, his practice in this way, moving in a way that feels good, that brings a sense of peace, is the organizing principle of his life. And I think it's a good question for us to sort of ask ourselves, what are the organizing principles in our life? It may be not to look like an idiot. It may be not to be called out. It might be to develop prestige. It might be make a lot of money. What is that organizing principle? So I had come at that time, I had just come back from Pa Oak. So it is a very intensive practice. You're meditating hours and hours and hours every day. It's like hard in that way. And I had felt like, I don't know, like a tight rope or a dry sponge. And I went to Plum Village, like right after I got out of like a 6-month retreat. And it was beautiful, a wonderful retreat. I just learned so much in that tradition. My mind was so clear, but I still felt dry in my heart in a way. And when I went to Plum Village, there were monks that were singing and they're hugging each other and playing music. And I thought, like, I just come from Pa Oak where there's like really strict rules, like nobody touches monks, you don't touch each other. There's like, you keep all the vows very strictly, you don't touch money, very austere. And I was like, what is happening? And people are like, breathing in, breathing out, like very flowery and childlike. And I was like frozen. It was like, this is way too loosey-goosey for me. Like, these people are acting like children. I don't know if I can handle this. And then the second day I was like, okay, breathing in, this is okay. Breathing in, breathing out, breathing. Yeah, I guess it's like a meditation. It is a meditation. I actually feel better when I breathe like that. And okay, they can put their arm around me. I guess it's okay, and then, 3 days in, I was like, breathing in, breathing out, just like, and it was so beautiful. And I just was like a sponge that was just getting filled with juicy water. And then I went on a walk with Thich Nhat Hanh, and I just followed him, trying to emanate, or he was just like emanating this like calmness and joy. And as I walked behind him, I felt that sense. I just felt good. I felt, oh, meditation practice can feel good, like all the time. It can be good in the beginning, middle, and end, not just in the middle and the end. And it was just so wonderful. And it's such a soft practice. It's a real group. It's a Sangha practice, but it's consistent. And I thought that was such a beautiful thing. It's not so on your own in a hut, focusing really hard sort of practice. It's together as a group, holding each other. So I always recommend sort of as a first stop, if somebody's just getting into Buddhism or meditation, like at least try it out for a bit because it's a soft entrance. And then when you're further along, come back, because all of that beginner stuff, it's all beginner stuff. In the beginning and at the end, it's the same thing. And I think that's what's really beautiful about it, is it's so simple. It's just the core stuff. So, I mean, I think there is place for this deeper meditation practice, which you're not going to get those hours in, and some of the techniques that you might get somewhere else in a more of a sitting practice. But I mean, there's a lot to offer. I think they're often underestimated, undervalued, that tradition.
So, would you suggest I try to find a group in Portland who's actively reading his stuff? I mean, I lived in Portland, Oregon, so there's got to be one. Find a group that's doing him and just try to join up with them. And in the meantime, is there any particular book of his that you think I could listen to on Audible? I mean,
sure.
Your story lit me up all over. I'm very kinesthetic, so it made me feel joyful.
Oh, good. Yeah. So let's see what I have. I don't have many books here, but True Love, just a little one.
Okay.
Is a really nice one. There's also one, I believe it's called In the Buddha's Words. Is that right? No, the Buddhist Teachings. Sorry, the Buddhist Teachings. That's Thich Nhat Hanh's, like, it's a little bit deeper. He goes through some of the sutras in that one and explains them from his perspective.
In the Buddhist Teachings. Okay.
Yeah, and then a book of poems.
Ooh.
Call Me by Your Names.
Okay. Alrighty.
I'd highly recommend this as well because he's a poet, and
yeah, he's a great calligrapher too.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right. Well, I want to give other people time, but boy, you really lit up when you were talking about him. I need you to know that. So did I. Okay. Thanks everybody for your time, and let's see what's next. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Thanks, William. Also, the book, I think the book is The Heart of the Buddha's Teachings. All right, so let's see. Aaron is next, and then Junsu. Okay, Aaron, go ahead. If you're
Great. Hello, William. This is actually perfect because my question is very related to Mary's. I have been in a monastic environment for the past 9 months and am now out of it, largely because I've been having a lot of panic coming up that doesn't seem to be being resolved very easily in that kind of go sitting environment. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about when to go very hard with the sitting practice versus when to maybe chill out, or how do you work with people with kind of severe anxiety or trauma stuff coming up in a practice, while also moving towards awakening. I don't want to chill out any more than I have to in a way, but I think I might have to. So,
yeah. Thank you. Really important question, and I really appreciate you asking. I think one of the reasons why I actually left being a monk, I mean, there were several, but one of them was to slow down in a way. And I can appreciate that. There's times where I was in meditation retreat and it was a little bit too intense. The realizations were coming a little bit too quickly and it was a lot to hold. It's like drinking from a fire hose in a way. Just some realizations about the world and about myself and all sorts of things. So I can appreciate that. I think, if I was to get a tattoo, I don't have any tattoos, but I'd love to get a tattoo. I just don't know where to get it. But it would be a picture of the emaciated Buddha. And I would get it as a reminder, because that's the story is so important to me. And when I first went to Pa Oak, I was practicing really hard, like, 14 hours a day is like a lot. That's you should probably not do that very much. Like walking, doing yoga, making sure that you are eating well is really important. And I thought the more I meditated, the less rest that I would need, because I had heard this somewhere. And it was like a real macho thing of like to push really hard in the meditation. Later on, I had one nun who took care of me when I was sick, and she just was making sure that I was eating a lot of food, and she was making sure that I was sleeping a lot. She kept telling me, sleep, sleep, sleep more. It was really important for your meditation. And she was like, very Sigulian tongue. If you ever find her, she's probably not very easy to find, but she's a Vietnamese nun, Sigulian tongue, Tuong. She would really encourage me to rest. But the reason I would get the emaciated Buddha is, there was a time when the Buddha was pushing himself really hard, and he was eating tiny bits of food. He was wasting away, meditating all the time, pushing his body so hard. And then he almost died. It almost killed him, almost died. And then when he realized that he had to take care of his body, that there was limitations to being a human, he had to find this sort of balance, he went further. And I think there's all sorts of ways that our body is limited. And I think to really care for our nervous system is really important. So a lot of times when I'm working with people individually, before I teach them any meditation, I talk about the nervous system. I talk about doing things like deep breathing, which I don't put that in the meditation category. I put that in the calming the nervous system category. It's something to do when things are going bad, when you are having a panic attack, to do deep breathing, to put ice pack on your face so your nervous system starts to calm down a bit, to do a longer exhale, and to do things that make your body feel comfortable and safe. Because starting in the beginning of a meditation practice, as you're building up your practice, it takes a lot of energy. It's hard. It takes a lot of effort in the beginning if you're sitting for a long time. It's a lot of mental power, and it's stressful for the nervous system. It's not until later where it becomes effortless and beautiful and soft and easygoing. That's not where we begin necessarily. So I think caring for the nervous system, being soft, is really important. I remember when I was in Pa Oak also, I pushed myself so hard, and I was so strict that I would only use the nice smelling soap like once a week. I would only allow myself to use, and it was like soap that had been offered to people, but it was like smooth and like silky when you washed yourself with it. And thinking back on that, I was like, why was I doing that to my body? So I think, and I ended up getting, so my body broke down. I got super sick. I ended up getting typhoid. I had to go to the hospital, spend time in a Burmese hospital, which is not something that you want to do. I almost got electrocuted. There's a hurricane. There's all sorts of terrible stuff. But really taking the time to take, so that was my lesson, but taking care of the nervous system, calming the body, taking breaks, sleeping well, exercising, I think is really important to just care for the nervous system. And that can totally be part of a practice. You're listening to your body, you're letting it teach you something in the same way you let the breath teach you something. Any other questions about that? Any other follow-up for Aaron?
That feels very helpful. I'm curious what your sense of the role, like, is there a role for that hardcore 14-hour-a-day approach, or are you sort of like that was unnecessary and or how do you relate to that now? And yeah, I guess that's all that's left there.
Yeah. So I think people who are doing 10, 14 hours a day of meditation, it's kind of, it becomes, I mean, yeah, it's nice for seeking and that sort of thing, but it's also like, is there a place for a marathon? You know, is there a place for pushing yourself to that sort of extreme? In a way. And a lot of the people who are doing more intensive meditation like that, this is their job. You know, as a, you know, for instance, as a monastic or as an aspirant or something, this is like their livelihood in a way. This is what the organizing principle of their life. And these are Olympians of the meditation practice, people who live their life like that for years and years. And these are professionals. You know, if there's a lot of people who don't run 30 miles or don't run a 4-minute mile or that sort of thing. And because it takes a lot of time and effort to be able to do that in a safe way, in a way that you're not harming your body. And, you know, I think even so, there's a lot of monks who have attained something really wonderful. And in the meanwhile, you know, their hips are messed up for the rest of their life, or their stomach is because they spent 16 years in a cave. You know, Pauk Sayadaw, half of his stomach is removed because the terrible diet that he was eating while he was living in a cave. So I think it's sort of a question of what you want out of your life, where your value set is. But I think in the Buddha's teaching, in terms of, you know, the asceticism, and I think in the emaciated Buddha, I think there is a balance to be found, and growing resilience. You know, when you have coping techniques that you've slowly built up, a meditation practice that's more and more solid, where doing many hours, you feel like you're prepared for it, I think that that's a good time to do it. But if it's pushing yourself to this extreme, it's like running a marathon without the proper footwear, without the proper development, and you can hurt yourself. And a lot of people do. I've seen it a lot. So I think taking your time in the practice, like this is a lifelong thing. You know, you're going to be doing this for a long time. And even if you're doing an hour a day for years, you're still going to be developing. You're still going to be going deeper in the practice. You got plenty of time to do it. You have plenty of time to, like, you know, mess up or get sick and take a break for a year and then do something else and then come back to the practice. And still keep moving forward. You're going to keep learning. Or as the Buddha says, just keep your mind inclined in the right direction. Just inclined in the right direction. And whatever you can do, any way you can organize your life to keep it inclined, because if you push yourself too hard, it's going to stop being inclined in that direction. So really taking care of your body, I think, is really important. And a community is really important too. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you both. William, do you have time for one more question if we make it quick?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, great. Junsu, please go ahead and ask your question if you like.
Hello? Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
So, so one of my main question regarding Buddhism is sensual pleasure. So I've been practicing since my college days, and one of my biggest obstacles is sensual pleasure as a young person.
Yeah.
Because there's so much social media, there's like so much websites to browse, there's so many games, there's so many, you know, sensual stimulants outside of our world. And anytime I'm really motivated to, you know, practice meditation, Noble Eightfold Path, sensual pleasures always get in the way. Like that's my default state. Like every time I want to meditate, my mind thinks, hey, I just want to browse Reddit instead, or I just want to play games instead. So, you know, I've been thinking, you know, some people, like when they ask on Reddit, they're like, you have to find the balance. You have to like, watch Reddit, meditate, do your own thing. But then, when I get into Reddit, like I end up browsing the entire, 8 hours, or, watching like countless amount of YouTube videos. So, I've been thinking like, maybe I should like abstain from like all of these, because like I really want to like, I know this is funny, but I really really want to attain nirvana, because I'm honestly just fed up with the cycle of life. So yeah, I mean, like I'm wondering like what's your thought on like abstaining from sensual pleasures, like just not doing anything regarding sensual pleasures.
Yeah. When I became a monk, it was really hard. Like the first 2 years of being a monk, I was not a enlightened, happy, peaceful monk. I had all sorts of bad habits when I first became a monk. And those were my coping mechanisms for stress. And they were socially acceptable. In the groups that I ran with, all the things that I was doing, or in college, binge drinking, that was like what people did. And when I became a monk, I couldn't do any of those anymore. Right. And even, I was celibate for like 7 years in my 20s. I think that's really hard. It's hard to do, and I think the only way that you can do it is being in the right environment. So to not be in an environment that is super supportive of a particular behavior, it's really hard. I do a lot of meditation classes in person. And when I do a meditation class in person, I'll often do a walking meditation. And I start a walking meditation saying, okay, everybody walk in different directions. I want you to just walk in whatever way feels good to you, but in different directions, and feel your footsteps. So everybody starts walking in different directions. And in less than 3 minutes, everybody's walking in the same direction in a circle every time, without fail. Every single time over the past 15 years of doing meditation happens every time. We're herd animals. We do what others around us are doing. We learn through osmosis. And I think to expect ourselves to be really different from somebody else, or different from the whole group, it's possible, but it's really hard. And it's a high expectation. So I think what's really important is to be able to organize your environment with that in mind. Surround yourself with those people who are doing what you'd like to accomplish, who are doing that together. Like tonight, if you didn't have the support of tonight, you might have meditated for 10, 15 minutes. It's been almost 2 hours. You might have meditated for 15 minutes, then you would have been on Reddit, right? And you might even be on Reddit right now, but you're mostly here, right? So that, I think, organizing your environment in a way that's supportive is super, super important, because we are built to pursue those sensual pleasures. There's a great book. It's called The Moral Animal. It's by Robert Wright. I highly suggest it. It's an amazing book, and it's about evolutionary psychology. And just talking about how human beings have come about, how our nervous systems developed, our desires, our impulses, all that sort of stuff, how it was sort of built over time. And it gives you a great understanding of what we are primed to do in our own behavior. There's a reason for sensual pleasure to reproduce, or, food tastes good, to keep us alive. So we pursue food. If food didn't taste good and we didn't love it, we would just wither away. We'd get distracted and forget to eat and die. So this sort of pleasure keeps us on task with reproducing in some way, and reproducing ourselves, not just sexually and other humans, but reproducing ourselves also on social media. We're just putting ourselves out there again and again. So provocative. It's so whatever. You guys know what I'm saying. It's so tantalizing. to reproduce ourselves again and again and again all over the place. And so they've built these systems to really, I don't want to say prey on it, but to use that for their own benefit, to monetize those systems. So I think understanding how those systems work is really important. Otherwise, you have really high expectations of yourself, and you're going to fail again and again and again, believing that you should be able to behave in a different way. Because I think it's possible, it's really hard. And to set up a system is going to be the best way to do that. Set up a system for yourself. Social, write it down, have a therapist or a coach, take a class, something where you can continue moving in that direction with other people, with a support structure, with scaffolding in some way.
Wow, thank you. I never thought of that way.
Sure.
Wow, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Junsu. Thank you, William. So we're right at roughly at the hour mark in the Q&A. So I think it's a good place to wrap, if that sounds all right with you, William.
Sure.
So thank you so much. This was fantastic. I really loved this and learned a lot. I really appreciate how you have no airs. You don't put on like big deal teacher vibes. You don't put on I'm so awakened vibes. And yet you have like, you've done an incredible amount of retreat. You've been a monk, like you've walked the walk, but you keep it chill about it, which I don't think is necessarily super common. And I really appreciate that. I think it's really wonderful and special. So thank you for being with us. Here in the chat, here comes William's website, how to offer dana to William. If you enjoyed this, if you got value from it, please consider offering a donation, offering dana in gratitude to William for the teachings and the advice that he's offered. So here comes his website, here comes the dana, here comes a link to the Sitheads website. Like he said, the best way to do this is to do it together, right? So squat up, come hang out with Sitheads. We do this every Thursday. Yeah. I hope William will be back. I'm certainly going to be doing my best to coax him back. And you can chat with us on Slack. In the meantime, we're on there all the time instead of doing our work. So please feel free to hang out with us there. Here it comes in the chat. And any last things you want to say,
sure,
William, before we close?
So just my website, I'm going to have a new website up in like a week or so, which I have a bunch of courses, online courses that are coming out, like do-it-yourself courses. And then I have a 12-week or 3-month course that I'm, present in, but they're all like video courses, and we have worksheets and handouts, defining your picture of well-being, developing a systematic practice, real exercises where you're integrating these meditation practices and muscles into your real life, and then actively, purposefully creating a community of support for yourself. And we also will have nutrition and yoga courses that are really focused on insight first. So developing insight about yourself, and then moving that out to, with the understanding of what I want in my life, here's the food that's helpful for me to eat with some of the science behind it. Here's how I want to use my body and how I want to cultivate in a way. So insight first, putting you leading your wellness journey. So that's all going to be on the skillfulmeans.life website. So, and thank you all for your questions, and thank you all for practicing. I could feel it on my meditation cushion as we were practicing earlier. Thank you, John, for what you're doing. I think this is amazing. Love to continue to be involved with you. I think you have an amazing thing going, and the fact that you're doing this all for dana and out of your pure heart, I think is a beautiful thing. So thank you very much for that as well.
Thanks, William. Yeah, and again, since it's in the chat and not I didn't say it out loud. For William's current website, you want to go to www. I think that's important. You want to make sure to include that, www.skillfulmeans.life, L-I-F-E. That's where you can find William. You can find us at sitheads.com, sit-heads.com. Thank you again, William. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us. I hope to see you on the Slack. Hope to see you next Thursday for our next meetup. All right, goodbye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks.